Today we're going to learn how to make this ad on Photoshop for Wrigley's Extra Bubblemint Gum. This is going to be our final product here, but we're going to go through this step by step of learning how to use different text tools and shape tools and background effects to create this. So what we're going to do first is actually find an image of the product to work from the internet. Now, with your final ad that you create, we obviously are going to be taking photos, so we won't be using images of the product from the internet. But for this example, we're going to practice using a found image. So go to Safari or Chrome and just type in extra Bubblemint Gum and locate an image of the product that is relatively clear. So I'm going to choose this one here. Make sure I click on it to make it bigger before I right click and select to save the image as. I'm going to choose to save this to my desktop for easy access and hit the save button. So I'll minimize that screen for the time. Now you will have Photoshop open, but we need it with a new empty document. So we're going to go up to File, go to New, and make sure you change Clipboard to International Paper because we want the size to be A4, so make sure that is selected. And where it says Untitled, rename it according to the name of the product. So I'm just going to call this Extra Gum and select OK. So now I have my blank A4 page to work within. I'm actually going to copy and paste my product in here first before I design the background. It's just going to be a little bit more helpful with trying to match the colours. So what I'm going to do is just minimize Photoshop to go to my product that is now saved on my desktop. So I find that right here. And I'm going to click and drag it into Photoshop. So right down the bottom here. I release it. And what it will do is open up Photoshop in a new tab with that product in. So all I'm going to do is use my marquee tool, this one here, just to draw a box around the product and use my keyboard Command C to copy, go to my new document and hit Command V to paste it. So at this point in time, I've now got two layers, my background layer and layer 1 with my product on. I'm going to call layer 1 my product layer. So I'm actually going to double click on that layer. Sorry, not that. I'm just going to double click like that to rename it product. Because when we have lots of layers, it is going to get confusing. So it's best to rename them as you go. So what I'm going to do is jump back to my background layer, and to make sure that I can edit this, I'm going to unlock it, meaning that I can now edit this background. So what I want to do is actually incorporate some colours from my product into my background. And like the finished product you saw at the very beginning over here, I want to try and create a gradient. So if I go back to my one I'm working on, make sure you're on the background layer, so layer 0. And over here where the colour swatches are, I want to change this to match the blues that I see inside my ad, inside my product. So I'm going to click on the white and I want it to match one of the blues. So what's really easy is when I move off that colour picker, you'll see a little eyedropper appears. So I can use that to grab the dark blue by clicking on it, and it makes a selection for me, so I can hit OK. I'm going to do the same for the black square, so hit on the black, use my eyedropper to select the light blue, might just go slightly more bolder shade, that one, and hit OK. So now I've got my two colours. Now I want to use my gradient. So my gradient tool is this one here, the box going from dark to light. So when I make that selection, it brings up a toolbar at the top. So the toolbar, when I do this drop-down menu, it shows many different types of gradients, but I want to keep the colours I've got. So I'm going to leave it on the first selection, the dark blue to light blue. The next tool along allows me to change the direction of the gradient. So at the moment, I have got it on this one here, which I really want to keep. Rather than going for a lineal or a round gradient, I want to keep it on this second last option, which will give me the light section in the middle. So I'm just going to zoom out for this. And all you need to do is click and drag. And depending how long you click and drag, your gradient will be created. Now you can see at the moment my dark blue is wedged between my light blue. I actually want it to be the other way around. So I'm actually just going to come over to my color swatches here and hit this arrow to change the colors and try again. So click and drag. So now I've got my light blue on the inside with my dark blue on the edges. So I'm aiming for something like this, where my light blue is relatively centered. And this is more of an interesting background, having the gradient rather than having the one color. So I'm going to jump back to my product layer now, and I want to delete this extra background. So all I'm going to do for this is use my marquee tool. I could use my magic wand, but as you can see, when I click on that, it will also pick up the white within the product. So I don't want to delete that, so I can't use the magic wand yet. So what I want to do is use the marquee tool. So when I click on that, all I'm going to do is just go right up to the edge of the product and then hit delete on the keyboard. And I'm just going to keep working my way around until I have all the white detached from the product. So these extra bits of white, because they're separated now from the white within the product, I can use the magic wand to click on them and then hit delete on my keyboard. And it will help me just a little bit quicker to get rid of that white. Remember, once I've got this selection of these kind of marching ant lines, to get rid of that, I need to press Command D. So now I've got my product. I'm going to actually make it larger. So I do that by making sure I've got the Move tool selected and double check that you've got the checkbox up the top here, where it says Show Transform Controls ticked. When I grab the corner, I need to hold Shift to make sure that it keeps my image in proportion. Otherwise, you might stretch it and distort the image. So because this is a big focal point of our ad, the item needs to be quite large. So I'm going to stick with maybe something for this for the time. And I can move it to make it more centered if I want, or off-centered. I'm probably just going to move mine slightly off-center, maybe over here for the time. And then hit return on the keyboard. The last thing for this tutorial, before we look at part 2, is adding a shadow underneath, just to make this pop out a little bit more and be easier to see and more effective. So I'm still on the product layer, and I'm going to go down to this FX button on the layers panel. So this gives you some special effects that you can play around with. I'm going to go to the drop shadow option, and I'm just going to move this so that I can actually see my product, because when I alter this, it will give me a preview. So what I'm going to do is change the angle, which is where the light is hitting my product. So I want my shadow underneath. So I'm going to just change it so that it is slightly angled just off the top of that circle. The distance is how far the shadow occurs underneath. So you can see when I drag that on my preview here, it shows that shadow. The spread, okay, is just going to, again, kind of impact how far we want that shadow to be. And the size is also how crisp and clear you want the shadow to become. So I'm just going to play around with these until I'm quite happy. I don't want it to be too full on. I want it to suit my product and achieve what I want it to do. And I want it to be more of a blurred shadow. So I think I'm quite happy with that. So I can hit OK once I'm done. So now I've got the first step done. Putting a gradient for my background in that matches my product, cutting out my product, and adding in a drop shadow. Make sure you save your work now before moving on to the next step.